Hey Nick, can you check that it's live for you?
It is in fact live, though not sure exactly
Nick, are you sharing or shall
Uh, can you?
I? Okay. Nick, are you sharing or shall I? Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, welcome to web.lab. This is a web development class, so if you're not here for that, you're probably in the wrong Zoom. And yeah, this is our first time going virtual. This class is usually taught in person in IAP. So we do ask you to like bear with us while we figure out all the kinks. Like we're trying our best to make it mimic like the experiences during real life IAP. So yeah, I want to take a moment and first I'll introduce me and Nick. We're both the co-presidents. We've been on staff for the past 2 years. And yeah, Nick, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, hi, I'm Nick, the other co-president, and yeah, I don't know, we do the things. Tell us if you have any questions. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Can all of staff just go around in this order and just introduce yourself and what you do?
All right, I guess that means I go next. Hey guys, I'm Daniel. I am class of 2022. This is my first year on web.lab staff, and I'm currently in San Diego, California.
I guess I'll go next. My name's Johan. I'm 2021, and this is my second year teaching web.lab.
Hi, my name is Tommy. I'm a senior, and this is my first time teaching web.lab.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nico. I'm a senior, first year teaching web.lab. Super excited.
What up? My name's Noah. I'm class of 2023, and this is my second year teaching web.lab.
Hello, I'm Jessica. I'm a senior, and this is my first time in web.lab.
Everyone, I'm Kai. I helped teach web.lab last year, and I'm a senior.
I'm Claire. I'm a junior, and this is my first year on web.lab staff.
Hi, everyone. I'm Akshay. I'm a TA, so you'll see me at office hours. It's also my first year on staff.
Hi, I'm Justin. I'm a junior. I'm not a class of 2020, as the slide says. I'm not that old yet. And I'm also a TA. This is my first year on the team.
Sorry, Justin. I'll fix that. Yeah, so these are the people that will be helping you this whole IEP. They'll be available on Piazza, will be available through office hours. We're very responsive people, so you can ask us anytime you need help. And yeah, here are some reminders. So if you guys want credit for the class or you want to enter the competition, you should register at portal.weblab.to. It'll ask you for your GitHub auth. This is so we can create your repo. And you should also join the Piazza and follow the installation guide immediately. So yeah, I'll give you guys a second. But yeah, okay. So I'll answer some frequently asked questions we've been seeing in the email. So we'll be live streaming and recording all our lectures to YouTube. The YouTube live stream can be used if you don't want to participate in the lecture. And it's like an overflow room because I think our Zoom only allows up to 300 people. So lectures are not mandatory. We will not take attendance, but you do get as much as you put into web.lab. And staff will be available during lectures to help you. So we strongly recommend you come because the last time I heard someone say they'd watch the video later, they never did, and they usually drop the class. So usually that's how it goes. But yeah, this class is also a competition. So at the end, you can submit your final project into the competition for a chance to win some good cash prizes. I believe first place is like around $5,000. And it really doesn't hurt to enter the competition. Like all you do is submit it and click a button and like deploy it. And it follows like a lot of the same requirements you do as you would if you were to get credit for the class. So we recommend you submit it. Yeah. To mimic like the flow, like what we do in IEP, we have breakout rooms during workshops. So if you've seen our schedule, we have a workshop slated We'll put you guys in breakout rooms, or you can stay in the main room if you like. But this is so staff can jump around and help you in the breakout rooms. And we'll be using kind of a queue system because there's a lot of you. So we won't and when you use the ask for help feature on Zoom, it doesn't really tell us who asked first. So you should ask questions on web.lab.2 and make sure to include your breakout room number when you do that. And secondly, you can find a questions doc at web.lab.2/questions. This is a Google Doc where you can ask us questions. We prefer this a little more over Zoom chat only because if you don't want to interrupt the lecturer, or if you it's also a way for us to save the questions and answers so you can view them later. And Buka Buka is something that Johan created to encourage interaction and questions during the lecture. He can demo that later after the kickoff. But he is a turtle that enjoys it when WebLab students ask him questions. And yeah, I'll hand it off to Nick.
All right, I think, Shannon, you need to grant me remote control.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so welcome to WebLab, and this class is going to be broken down into basically the following steps. First, in this week, we're going to teach you how to build an app together from scratch. We're going to teach you everything you need to know, and maybe a little bit more in the second week, where we'll also cover advanced topics and have some sponsor lectures, and you guys will get started on your projects. In the third week, you guys are going to code, and you'll have your first MVP for the project, as well as in the fourth week, you'll code more aggressively, and hopefully finish up and get a final project ready. This week will also include the final submissions, the judging, and the awards for the competition. You can see more about this at weblab.mit.edu/schedule. So in this course, we take you end to end in web development. We teach you how to make everything from the server all the way through the front end. And you can make some really cool stuff. Like these are all, I believe, things these are all things that you can make with the tools that we teach you in this class. The world of websites out there is really enormous. There's all kinds of things that you can make. You have to be creative enough to think of them. So you can get something as simple as Doge 2048, just kind of funny and memey, or you can get something. You get something like Club Penguin or Facebook, things that more people will use, get a little more social, a lot more complex, and it would take thousands of people working on it. So I'll hand it back to Shannon to talk about how this stuff works.
So yeah, thanks, Nick. So just to give a brief overview, just breaking down what is a website. So you're trying to access Facebook.com, you're the client, you're trying to talk to the server Facebook. These are some terms you'll be hearing from during every lecture, which is why I want to go over them now. Basically, you'll make a GET request. You'll learn how to do that in a further lecture this week, and you'll get a response with web page files. And you'll use something like Chrome, hopefully, or Firefox to view this. And it will load up those web page files, which Nick will talk about.
Yeah, so when you have a website, it's generally made up of something called HTML, which is a coding language where you build the structure of your website. This contains all the components that you see, all the information, all the text, the images, things like that. On top of that, you also have what's called CSS, cascading style sheets, which basically tells the website how to look, how to make it look good. And in addition to that, you have JavaScript, which is sort of it provides any sort of motion or information fetching. So it can make your website more interactive and functional. And finally, you have assets like images, videos, mostly about dogs for this class. We like dogs here. So for this class, we're going to show you how to build a web application while we're teaching you. So we're going to learn by doing. And what we're going to build, if you go to weblab.2/example, is a website called Catbook. So if you all go here, weblab.2/example, you can log in and start playing around with Catbook. Shannon, you might have to do this. I can't.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can log in for you.
Yeah. So this is the example of what we'll be building. Like you'll build like an auth system. You'll display things from a database, allow other users to log in and post their own things and comment. And there's also something called like Chatbook as well. So we'll also teach you how to use like sockets, how to like live update your website to receive new messages, yada, yada, yada. And yeah. So you guys can play around on that. And yeah, so we have something called milestones for this class. Think of it like as your homework or P-sets per se. You need to complete all of these in order to get credit for the class. So we have milestone 0 due on Wednesday night, midnight. And milestone 0 is where you form a team of up to 3 people. And you can submit 10 of your best ideas, which will be reviewed by staff and will give you like some feedback. And you can turn that in on the portal. Milestone 1 is due Friday, January 8th. This, over the weekend, we'll have you come in and give something called project pitches, where you'll show us your wireframes of your website and like a more fleshed out idea of what you're going to build. And we'll also teach you how to make wireframes during this class later this week, so don't worry about that. Also, on Tuesday, 19th, we have milestone 2 due. This is probably, this is a really big one. Basically, you're going to build some working version of your website. It doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be like perfect, but this is just to make sure you guys are staying on track for the final submission, which is due on Wednesday, January 27th. This is like the hard cutoff for people who want to enter the competition. If you do not want to enter the competition, or you're just doing this for credit, you have 1 extra day to do it. So it doesn't make that much of a difference. And yeah, so things you have to build. You have to build a dynamic website with a back end. It means you need to have a database, you need to have to build your own API, things like that. You also need to include authentication so you can have personalized experience based on user accounts. And you need to fulfill some minimum security requirements. We'll go over later what this means later in our security lectures and such. Also, your website needs original design and implementation. We'll know if you just copy a website from the web. So don't do that. And yeah, you also have to code this on the repo that we create for you. This is to ensure everyone doesn't starts their project at the same time, to encourage fairness in the competition.
So some things that you can't do. You can't use any tools like Drupal, WordPress, or Squarespace. These are things that will just make your website for you, and that's cheating. So we don't allow that. You can't use any part of a previous project. We have some very, very rare cases in which we've approved parts of previous projects, but you have to ask permission from staff, and you have to have a really good reason. You can't outsource any of your development. You can't hire people to do your coding for you, or make your team larger than 3 people. And finally, don't be evil. That's bad. Don't make bad websites that do bad things. If you have a question, you don't know whether you're violating one of these rules or the other rules on our About page, post a question on Piazza. We'll answer. We're happy to help. Shannon, do you want to take this?
Yeah. So these are some of the core things that judges will look for and we will look for when evaluating your website. So you need to make to have a good shot at winning one of the prizes or becoming a semi-finalist in the competition, your website needs to be functional, which means all your features work properly. Your website should also be usable. So these include things like UI and UX, like user interface and the user experience that needs to be good. Like aesthetics, which I just talked about, and as well as concept execution, like how well did you apply the solution, which is your website, to whatever problem you're trying to solve. Again, you can find more information about this at our About page. We go more into detail there. And yeah, so there are many ways to help in this class. All of staff is very eager to help you. And Nick's favorite.
Oh yes, so my favorite thing is Piazza. Everyone should know this because it's everyone on Web Lab staff's favorite thing, because all of you are going to go here to ask for help. All of you are going to ask so many questions and you're going to put them all on Piazza so that everyone else can learn from them too, because people tend to have the same questions and you can learn from each other. Other places that you can go for help would be the course website, weblab.mit.edu. We put a lot of good resources there, as well as answer a lot of common questions. If neither of these help you enough, you can then go to office hours. We'll hold at least 2 office hours a week, sometimes more. We'll schedule them ad hoc, as well as a hackathon once during week 2 and once during week 3, which are basically extended office hours that go late into the night. And so during these hackathons, we basically just try to get as much stuff done as possible, make sure that you guys are on track for your projects. We usually try to have boba and free food and snacks, but very sadly, that's not a thing this year. It's hard to deliver that to 300 people. So instead, we'll just have a lot of help from the staff. We're all going to be there. We're all going to be looking out for you guys.
Yeah, there's a lot else you can get out of weblog. We'll teach you a lot of UI design. We'll teach you how to use version control on your terminal later today. Coding in general, and yeah, I feel this will be your first experience at creating something. I think many of you are underclassmen, so this is a really good chance to create something from scratch yourself. You can be very proud of it. But yeah. So most importantly, WebLab's not a classic MIT class. You can put as much time or as little time into it as you want. But we here and staff, we're all students. So we have been in your shoes before and we're very actively involved in making this class really good for you. So we really value your feedback. We send out a feedback form every day. And we have Piazza. We try to get an average response time under 5 minutes or so we're pretty fast. And we strongly recommend coming to lecture. And yeah, other things that make set us apart is that we have a theme. So hopefully your final projects will have some tangential relation to the theme this year, which we will be revealing now. Well, not now, actually. Our past themes include Around the World, Remember the Future, Time Gets Worse in Here, Beyond the Horizon, Back to the Roots, Pressing Any Key to Start, which a lot of people created games, Craft Your Own Blank. We had a lot of DIY websites. And this year, our lovely pub chair, Jessica Yin, has edited a video together in which all of staff put their best foot forward and took up on acting. So I will share this. I didn't share computer sound. Or actually. Nick, can you hear this? No? Okay, 1 second. Okay.
In the year of 2020, a deadly virus took over the world. People have found ways to keep themselves busy. For the web.lab staff, it is a busy time of the year as they get ready for another semester of web.lab. But someone is missing.
Hello, I hope you guys had a great winter break. We have lots of work coming up. Wait, guys, has anyone seen Jessica?
Yeah, I haven't heard from her for a while now. Maybe she's just busy with the holidays, though.
I mean, same, but shouldn't she still check her messages?
All right, well, let me know if you ever hear from her. Okay, that's all. Thanks for coming to the meeting.
Yes, see you all next meeting.
Bye.
Oh no.
Who are you?
Man, I wish someone could help me.
Let's play tag. Who wanna play tag? Tag, you're it.
Has anybody talked to Nico, Daniel, Justin, or Noah recently? They haven't been responding to any of my messages.
Yeah, ever since the last meeting, they've been gone. I hope they're all right.
Oof, we'll just have to make do.
Yeah, whatever. Can we talk about how we can encourage students to use good coding practices?
Oh, also, I think I broke Git because I was using it like a monkey. What do I do?
Guys, but wait, seriously, like, where are they?
And that's how we use GraphQL to make Puka Puka happy. Any questions?
Nope, that was amazing.
Sounds great.
Sounds cool.
Wanna play tag? Tag, you're it.
Wait, where is everyone? Our first lecture's tomorrow.
Yeah, whoever will give our intro to HTML and CSS lecture.
Well, I'm worried about how the projects will turn out. I don't want these websites to look like Space Jam or Catbook.
Guys, I'm actually worried. Like, what happened to them? Can't you see most of the staff is missing? Where could they have gone?
So yeah, the theme of this year is tag yourself. It's very abstract. You can just have some link to this theme, and yeah, we will now go on to our next lecture. Oh wait, first, any questions, comments, concerns? Oh, I guess it is IFP 2020.
Do you want to show them Buka Buka?
Oh, all right. So this is Buka Buka. This is so basically he pulls from our Google Docs questions. The more questions that are in there, the happier it gets. There's some algorithm Johan created. The more questions per minute, he gets happier. And yeah, if he gets sad, he'll get really small and he'll start crying. If he's happy, he'll get big and there will be confetti. But this is just something fun. We cut it up. But yeah. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Daniel, our next lecturer.
Sweet. Thanks, Shannon. Let's get started with the first lecture of WebLab. Let's get right into it. Okay, so welcome to WebLab Day 1. We're going to get started. So Shannon and Nick just had an amazing intro telling you about all that's going to happen this semester with making your websites. But before we actually get into doing any website coding, we first need to learn some tools that we're going to need to use in order to be able to successfully work on websites in teams. So the two tools I'll be teaching you in this lecture are command line and Git. Let's get started. So the plan is to first go over the command line here on the left. This is like the app symbol for command line. And then after that, we'll use command line to run some Git commands, and we'll learn about Git as well. So you'll learn about what they are, why we care about them, what they do, etc. All right, let's get started with command line. So what is it exactly? What is the command line? Well, the way I like to think about it is it's your computer secret menu. Okay, so as an analogy, let's pretend that you go to In-N-Out. And at In-N-Out, you can just look at the menu and see what they offer. You can order a double-double, you can order fries. But it turns out there's a lot more that In-N-Out can give you besides what they explicitly say on their menu. You can order animal fries, you can order an animal burger, etc. And these are options that you actually can do at In-N-Out that it does not tell you that you can do. So your computer is basically just In-N-Out in the sense that there's things that you can do on your computer that your computer does not explicitly give you a button that you can click to do that. And the way we access those things is through the terminal. So the terminal actually encompasses a lot of functionalities on your computer, including but not limited to your file explorer, your code editor, and as well as accessing Git commands. So your terminal can do all of these things and more. And in order to demo that, we'll just show how everything that you can do in your file explorer right now, everything that you can do there, you can also do in your command line, in your terminal. I'm going to use those words interchangeably. All right, so let's do a quick demo. You all should have installed command line or Git bash for Windows. So if you're on Windows, go ahead and open your Git bash. If you're on Mac or Linux, you can open up your terminal. And feel free to follow along here if you want to, but I'm just going to demo some things that your terminal can do. So if we look here at the file explorer, I'm currently in my home directory, and I can see a list of files and folders that exist there. Similarly, in my command line, I can type pwd, and it'll tell me that I'm in my home directory. So pwd stands for print working directory. And you can see that it will tell you where you are in your file, in your folder system, kind of like how your file explorer tells you that you're currently in your home. Another thing that your file explorer can do is you can see the list of all your folders and all your documents in a certain area. We can do the same in your terminal by telling it to give that to us. So if we type ls, which basically you can think of ls as list, and we press enter, it'll list out all of those files and folders. So we can quickly see that, you know, things that you can do in your file explorer, you can also do in your command line. If I want to move into a file in my file explorer, I can double click and go into test. In your terminal, that would just be cd. So we could cd and then type the name of that folder. And it would, now if we type in pwd, print working directory, we're in our test folder. This is all to say, again, that your command line, your terminal, it's going to be a tool that you can use to do a lot of things directly, tell your computer directly what to do. There's some other things that we can do in here. We can remove files. So in my file explorer, I would right click and then delete. We can just type rm, which stands for remove, and the name of the file, and it'll disappear. We can remake files. So if we type in touch and then the name of a file, it will create it for us like that. We can make folders. So if I wanted to make a folder called new folder, I could type make dir, which stands for make directory, and that would make a folder for us, right? Just like that. So don't worry, you don't have to memorize all of those commands to start, but this is just to show that this tool exists and it'll be something that we'll need to use in order to access our computer's secret menu. All right, let's go back. So that was a quick demo of the command line. Here are some of the simpler commands that you will need to know moving forward. But to summarize on the command line, it's a tool that you can use to tell your computer to do things explicitly. And it'll come back later when we start to do practical things in WebLab. If you have any questions, definitely ask them in the questions document, or feel free to direct message a staff member on Zoom, anything like that. Because this can be confusing, especially if you have not worked with Terminal before. But that's just a quick introduction. And now we're going to move on to the meat of this lecture, which is about Git. All right, so Git, what is Git? Git is a version control system. Okay, so that means that it allows groups of people to collaborate on coding projects together. And in order to understand Git, we're going to tell a story. So let's start with the story. It's story time. We have a guy, his name's Bob, right? And let's say Bob is working on a project. He's working on a file. And he's working on this file in a team. So Joan's also trying to work with Bob on the same file. So Joan tells Bob, hey, I see you have a file. Can I have access to it? I would like to edit it as well. And what Bob can do is Bob can open up Gmail or Hotmail or whatever and compose an email, attach the file, and send it over to Joan. And then Joan can open the email, download the file, make her edits, and then send it back to Bob over email. And in that way, Bob is going to receive all of Joan's edits. So Bob is going to have a file that has both his edits and Joan's edits as desired, which is great. But now, instead of working on a single document, let's instead pretend that they're working on a coding file, right? Or a coding project. And one thing you'll quickly realize in WebLab, which might be different from some of the other coding experiences you've had before, is that it tends to be the case in coding projects, especially website projects, that you're going to have lots of different files that do lots of different things. So now instead of one file, we have a bunch of files. And Joan is going to have copies of that same set of files. And so the question is, if we use this same method of sharing files, of collaborating on the projects, what could possibly go wrong? So take a second and think about it. Definitely, if any of you want to unmute and just throw out some ideas or type them in the Zoom chat, that would be welcome as well. But what are some ideas? What do people think can go wrong?
Accidentally delete something.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You could actually accidentally delete something. That's a good one.
Accidentally get rid of someone's access.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, this is awesome. So you guys have come up with a lot of, I don't want to say great errors because errors suck, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And you guys have a lot of great ideas, which is great. So let's say, oh, I think I skipped a slide. Yeah. So I think there's probably three main problems that I see with this schema that we want to solve. So the first one, I'm going to call it synchronization of files. And to understand that, we're going to, again, use a small story. So let's say that Bob is working and he realizes that there's a bug on line 3 in a specific file. Okay, so Bob goes ahead and fixes the bug. So far, so good. But now the web lab deadline is approaching. And so Joan scans over all the files, doesn't catch the bug, thinks it's okay, and just submits. And in the end, she submitted a buggy website because she did not synchronize with Bob and did not catch the change that he made. Which would make them really sad, right? They just submitted a buggy website for their final project. So the problem here is no one knows which file is the most up-to-date in this version. So in this sort of schema. So we would want a way of knowing which file is the most up-to-date. The second problem I see is something I'll call collaboration of files. What do I mean here? We'll tell another story. So let's say in this time, Bob still catches the bug. And now when Joan is scanning, she sees something else. She sees that the formatting is pretty ugly. So she wants to fix up how the website looks. So they make their respective changes. I think someone is unmuted, but all right, we're good now. So yeah, so she's fixing the changes because she doesn't like how the website looks. And this time they do manage to realize that they have different versions. So they talk to each other and they see, oh, wait, our code is different. And their solution is, hey, you know, Joan, buddy, I know you made changes in like 50 different places, but can you just copy them over one by one, line by line, so that we can sync up and have the same version? So again, this is going to make Joan really sad because in addition to working hard on like coding the stuff and figuring out what needs to go where, now she has to arduously copy everything over, and that's no good either. And the problem is, if we realize there's two different versions of the same file, it's hard to know how to join them. So it'd be really nice if there was a way to automatically do that. And the third problem here with this schema is a version history. So what does that mean? Let's say Bob is coding and he wants to modify some code, and he decides to remove some lines because he suspects they might not be useful anymore. And then he saves his file, closes everything, goes to sleep. And then he comes back and he realizes, wait, I actually needed those lines because the website's not working anymore and I have no idea how to fix it. If he cannot revert back to the previous version, he's going to be really sad. He's going to have to waste a lot of time trying to figure out how to recover all of that stuff. So it would be really nice if we could go back to a working copy whenever we get into a state where we don't know what's going on and everything is just broken. So you might have been thinking, well, I know something that can solve all of these problems, right? Have you ever heard of Google Docs? And at first that seems pretty good. Google Docs does solve some of these problems. It solves synchronization and merging issues because you can have multiple people working on the same document at the same time, and all of their changes will get merged together. There's even a version history because you can click the edit history and see the previous versions of your document. So that's great. We should just use Google Docs for coding, right? Well, it turns out that you don't really want Google Docs when it comes to coding projects. And the reason is twofold. The first reason is that generally when you're coding, you're going to be working on different features. You're going to be working on separate, unrelated parts of the website. Person A might be working on a button, and person B might be working on login authentication in the backend, right? So since you're working on two totally different things, you don't need to see that your partner is making progress on their feature when you're working on your own feature. It's just not relevant to what you're doing. So you don't need the live updating of Google Docs, but it turns out you actually don't want it either. And the reason is a little bit nuanced, but if any of you have ever written buggy code before, you might recall that debugging code is an absolute pain. So you can kind of imagine that debugging would be even worse when there are two people's code that could contribute to a bug that would break the entire website. So not only do you have to look through your own code, you would have to look through your partner's code as you're compiling, which is going to be an absolute pain. So we're not going to do live updating. Instead, what we want to be able to do is to work locally on our feature with the previous version as the baseline, and then building our changes on top of that. And then after we're done with our feature, sync up with our partners and combine the code together in a way that incorporates both of our features. Or we want to merge our changes. And so the solution, which you might have guessed by now, is to use something called Git. And the question you might have is, well, how does Git work? How does Git get around these issues, right? And so we'll just explain really quick how Git does what it does. And the way Git works at its core is Git tracks changes to files by doing math, by computing the difference every single time you make changes. So what does that mean? Let's go through an example. Let's say we have a document, and it starts out as version 1. It's pretty simple. And we make a change, right? So to go from version 1 to version 2, what we did was we added a line and about cats. So now we have version 2. And then to go from version 2 to version 3, we add another line like corgis. So what is going on here? From version 1 to version 2, we added this line. From version 2 to version 3, we added this line. And what Git is doing is Git is not storing this version and then this whole version and then this whole version. Instead, what Git is doing is it's storing this version 1. And then every single time you want to go to a new version, it's storing the difference between those two versions. So to go from version 1 to version 2, it's storing the difference, adding and about cats at line 3. And then from version 2 to version 3, we're adding like corgis at line 4. And so now with all the stuff that Git is storing, it can recreate version 2 or version 3 whenever you call upon it, whenever you want to access it. So if we wanted to access version 2, we would start with version 1 and include the diffs, the differences that Git stored. And now we would be able to get version 2. And then to get version 3, we would do likewise. So that's fundamentally what Git is doing. In order to understand the rest of the lecture, let's go through some terminology. Okay. So the first is a repository. Your repository is just a set of files that your Git is going to track changes on. So this is all the files involved in your project. This will basically just be your website for the sake of WebLab. A commit is then a set of changes that will move it from one version to the next version. So that's kind of like the math, right? The differences that Git is keeping track of. All packaged together, that's going to be a commit. And then finally, the log is going to be just somewhere you can access the version histories of everything. So the log contains version 1, version 2, version 3, etc. Alrighty. Now let's talk about how Git solves all of those problems that we came up with earlier. So immediately, we can see that the log that Git stores solves our version history problem. We can see that there is a log that has all of the previous versions on it, and Git will allow us to revert our project to any of those previous versions whenever we want to. So the version history problem is solved. But what about synchronization and collaboration, right? And the answer here is going to be Git servers. In this class, we will be using GitHub as a Git server. So what is a Git server exactly? You can kind of think of it as a centralized source of truth, a centralized place somewhere out there that stores the most updated version of the project. And everyone can access it. Everyone can read from it, and everyone can write to it. So how does that work? Let's say Bob is working on that same project, right? And he's going to make a change to one of the files. So he has this change file now. What he's going to do is commit those changes into a commit, right? We talked about that earlier. That's a packaged set of changes. And then he's going to push it to the Git server. He's going to send it to the Git server so that he updates the centralized source of truth, right? And so now the Git server is going to store Bob's updated version of that file, which is great. So now when Joan wants to start working on the project, she can request the most updated version or do a Git pull. And now her local file will be updated with all of Bob's changes. So they have the same files now, which is awesome, right? That's what we want. So just to review, a commit in Git server terms, right? A commit is a packaged set of changes. A push is to send commits to the Git server. It's the action of sending your commits to that centralized Git server. And a pull is the action of updating your files, of requesting the files from the Git server and updating. So that solves synchronization, but what about the merging issues from before? It's not immediately obvious how that's going to be solved. So let's see what happens. Let's say Joan makes some changes and she pushes them to the Git server. Before Bob has received Joan's updated version, he's already worked on his own set of changes. So what's he going to do? He's going to try to push them, right? But the Git server is going to say, no, you cannot push your changes. The reason is because the file that I have, the most recent file, the most updated file that I have is not the same as the one that you edited. I'm going to need you to pull first and make sure that you incorporate the changes from Joan's updated file before you can push again. So the Git server is going to deny him and tell him to pull first. So he's going to pull. And now Git runs an algorithm on Bob's computer locally that will try to merge the files. And it just does that by, remember, Git stores changes in math, right? So it's going to take Bob's set of changes, Joan's set of changes, and just try to apply both of them. And if it doesn't run into any issues, Bob will have an automatically merged file. The problem is sometimes the algorithm will fail, in which case Bob will have to go through and manually override those changes and decide what to keep and what to throw away. We're going to go through an example of that later in this lecture at the very end. So for those of you who have always been confused and sad whenever you see a Git merge, hopefully you will be less sad moving forward. Anyway, so Bob's going to merge that manually for all the parts that the algorithm does not automatically merge. And then only then can he push it back to the Git server and have everything centralized again. So yay, we've solved synchronization because we have this Git server that everyone can push and pull from. So everyone knows what the most recent version is. And we also solved collaboration because of the merging algorithm, which will work 90% of the time. And when it doesn't work, you still have a human that can manually verify what to do. Sweet. So we solved all our problems and we know how Git works. So what can we do? Let's go ahead and try it ourselves. All right. So if everyone can open up their terminal again, we can try doing something together. What we're gonna do is we're going to create a Git repository, and we're going to initialize it, and we're going to push it to GitHub just to see what happens. All right, so if you open your terminal and you make a directory called, we'll just call it web.lab project. You can call it whatever you want, but if you want to follow along, you can call it web.lab project. So that will make a new folder called web.lab project, and then we're going to have to cd into it. We're going to have to change our directory to that folder that we just made. This is not your actual web.lab project, by the way. This is just as a toy example. So this is not the folder you're actually going to be using for your web.lab project. All right, so once we're there, we can type touch index.html. That will create a file, right, in our folder. So now we should have a folder with a file inside of it. And the last thing we're going to do is type git init. So this is an example of one of those things that we're accessing from the secret menu from our terminal. Git init, unless you have a specialized app installed, is not something that you can just click a button and do. This is a secret command. We're telling our computer exactly what we want to do with our terminal. So git init, what that does is it initializes an empty Git repository in our directory. Okay, try to follow along if you can. I'll pause a little bit on each slide so that you can copy the commands over, but don't worry if you just want to watch and follow along. That will totally work as well. Okay, so if we go ahead and type git status, we're going to see that there are no commits yet, and there's an untracked file, index.html. And that should make sense because we haven't committed our changes, right? Our changes was, what our changes were, we just created this file, right? So we haven't committed it, we have not pushed it. We haven't committed it, we have not pushed it. So it makes sense that it's not tracked by Git yet. So what we need to do is allow Git to be able to track it. In order to do that, we need to first type git add and then the name of the files that we want to add. Something that you'll see often is git add space and then just a dot. What the dot means is that it'll add everything automatically. So if you are lazy and you don't want to type index.html, you can just type git space add space dot, and that should work as well. And then after we do that, if we check our status, we'll see that, hey, we're tracking this change now, but we need to commit it, right? So the next step after we git add is we do a git commit. So that's git space commit space, and then we need to do -m space, and then a commit message. What your commit message is basically a short tag, a short label that describes what you did in this commit. In this set of changes, what did you do? This will be useful for just logging purposes, right? If you want to see, oh, what did I do in this commit? Your commit message should detail that. So if you added a login button on your website, or if you added a nav bar, or you changed the font to a different font or something, those are all valid commit messages. All right, so git commit -m, and then in quotes, a commit message. So mine was OMG, I made a git commit. All right, and now if we type git status again, we'll see that there's nothing to commit. The working tree is clean. So we've committed all of our changes, right? So Git is keeping track of our commits. And in the Git log, we'll see, hey, there was a commit, and the commit message was, OMG, I made a commit. All right, so that's great. We have a local Git repository. And now we're going to initialize a Git server so that other people can collaborate on this project with us. So to do that, let's go to github.com. All of you should have GitHub accounts by now. And what we're going to do is we're going to sign in. And then on the left here, we're going to click New Repository. All right, so it's going to take us to a screen that looks like this. And in repository name, we'll just type the name of our folder, the name of our project, whatever you named it. In my case, it was web.lab project. So we're going to type that in there. And then after that's good, we are going to come down here and click create website. Or sorry, create repository. All right, and once we do that, it should take us to a page that looks something like this. So we have an empty Git server, or we have a Git server here that has an empty repository. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to push our existing local repository from the command line. Okay, so the nice thing is it tells you the commands that you need to run in order to do this. You can ignore the git branch command, actually. That's not necessary. Or you could follow it directly. Either way is fine. But the important part here is this first line, git remote add origin, and then this link. So what that basically is doing is it's linking our local repository to this Git server. So now whenever we push our changes and pull our changes, it'll be from this remote server. Okay, so let's go do that. Let's go back to our command line. We're going to type git remote add origin, and then whatever link it gave us in order to link up our local repository with the web server. And now if we do a git push, all of our local commits, all of our local changes will now be pushed to that remote server. So our packaged commit will be sent off to live at that remote server. If you do type git push, just git push, it might tell you that you have to add this flag set upstream origin master. The nice thing is that you don't have to remember that. It will always give you that warning, and it will always tell you that you need to include this flag for the very first push. Sweet. So if we go back to GitHub and we refresh the page, drum roll, we're going to see, OMG, I made a Git commit. And now instead of being some sad empty repository, we're going to have our local changes there. So nice, congrats. You guys all just created a Git repository and pushed to it. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you guys through how to solve a merge conflict. So for those of you who thought you already knew everything about command line and Git and get scared every time you see a merge conflict, now's the time to tune in and pay attention. So merge conflicts arise when you and your partner work on the same piece of code, right? And you make different changes. And the Git algorithm that's trying to combine all of your changes together is going to get confused because it's like, which one do I pick? Do I go with person A? Do I go with person B? I don't know. So usually what ends up happening is the way it happens is like one person is working on the thing, they don't push. The other person's working on the thing, they haven't pushed, and then they both push at the same time. So the way that happens in this story is, let's say we go to sleep after pushing everything, right? And then we wake up the next day and we decide, hey, let's add some stuff to our index.html file. So this here is a screenshot of VS Code. That's going to be the code editor that we'll be using in this class. You should have installed it at the installation party on Saturday. If you do not have VS Code installed, please ask a question or go ahead and do it if you can do it by yourself. All right, so here I have index.html open in my code editor, and I'm just going to add some code, right? So I'm going to modify line 1 and line 2, and I'm going to write some code for my website. Alrighty, so we've made some code, we've saved it. If we type git status now, again, there's going to be some changes that we have not committed yet, right? Because we just made some changes, we haven't committed them. So we're going to need to add them like before. So this time I used git add dot. It will do the same thing as git add index.html. It's just shorthand. And then I do git commit. And this time my message is, I made a website. And if we type a git status now, everything should be clean. We should have committed everything. You don't need to follow along for this part. This is just to demo the merge conflict. And now when I try to push, so I typed git push, GitHub tells me your push has been rejected. You have to fetch first. Updates were rejected because the remote contains work that you do not have locally. Okay, well, let's go to the remote and see what happens. So we're going to go to our Git server on GitHub. And when I refresh, I see, hey, this guy named Akshaj came in and he made a commit at some point between when I last committed and when I last pulled and now. So kind of like in the example from the slides before, when Joan committed, when Joan pushed and Bob tried to push and got rejected, I just got rejected by the Git server because Akshaj committed before me. So what I need to do first is I need to go back and I need to git pull. So this way I'm taking all of Akshaj's changes from the Git server and updating my personal local version with that. And we're going to run into some merge conflicts this time. So as a forewarning, this will happen, but it's not going to happen all the time. It'll probably happen 10 to 20% of the time. But most of the time, you don't even have to worry about this. It'll automatically pull, and then you can just, and then you don't have to worry about it. But sometimes you're going to run into these merge conflicts. So we're going to see exactly how to address those in VS Code. So when you open up your VS Code now, you're going to see something that looks like this. There's going to be your original change up here. And then there's going to be the conflicting changes. So Akshaj and I both modified line 1 and line 2. Akshaj wrote some much nicer code than I did. And my crappy code is still up here, just chilling, right? But there's a conflict because they were both trying to modify the same line. So now locally, I see, hey, I have this version. Akshaj did this version. And then I have a few options. So the first option is I could just ignore Akshaj's changes. I could say, you know what? I think my changes are better. So I'm just going to delete all of your changes and then push it with my version. That's fine. Though a little bit rude. You can also say, you know what, Akshaj, I like your version better. I'm going to get rid of my version and we're just going to keep your version. Or the way I like it the most is if you say, you know what, both of these have some useful things. We're going to combine them. All right, well, how do you combine them? That seems a little bit difficult. Well, the first thing that you need to do is recognize which part is your changes, which part is their changes. And the way you can do that, I have this extension which highlights it in some colors. I don't know if that automatically happens for the default version. But another thing that you can look at is these boxes here. So there's going to be this arrow thingy with a head, and then there's going to be your local changes underneath that. And then there's going to be this line of equal signs. So everything between this head and this set of equal signs is going to be what you did locally. And then underneath the equal signs down to the arrows and then this string here, that's the git commit ID. Everything between this equal signs and these arrows, that's going to be the other people's work, the other people's changes. So that's how you tell what is what. So that's my commit. This is Akshaj's commit from the Git server. And the way I'm going to modify it this time is I'm going to say, you know what? I think the content that I put is useful. I'm going to incorporate it into Akshaj's framework. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my set of changes into the body of Akshaj's text. So I went from here, I copied my stuff, I deleted it, and then I pasted it into the body of the website. So that would be right here at between line 10 and 11. And now I'm happy with this version of the website. So then I can go back to my terminal, my command line, and I can recommit those changes. So I'll add it again, and then I'll do a commit and then a push. And now if I go to the Git server and I refresh, we're going to see that it was correctly merged. That was my commit message. And it now has an updated version that has both of our changes. Okay, so that's the gist of how you solve merge conflicts. If you ever run into those, which you will, definitely ask us for help. We're more than happy to do that. And we have one last thing to do before we go on lunch break. So what is that? We need to get the workshop. So throughout this WebLab class, we will be interacting with Catbook, the website that we'll be building together. And throughout that, we'll be teaching you a bunch of different concepts in web programming, such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. But in order to follow along, we need to have a version of this Git repository. So if you go to this website here, weblab.2/catbook, it'll take you to the website. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to click this green code button here and copy the HTTPS string, the web URL. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our terminal. And what we're going to need to do is type git clone and then the link. Git clone and then the link. And if we do that, it will clone Catbook React into a local folder. So now when we want to work with the Catbook React code, we can look in it and see, hey, look, it has a bunch of different files for everything that's going to happen in this class. So in our next workshop in the afternoon, we're going to be working with this repository. So make sure you have it downloaded. If you can't figure it out, ask someone for help. Okay, let's take a look at that. So if we cd into our Catbook React folder and we open it up, we can see that there's a bunch of files in the Catbook React website available to us. We'll get to play around with all of this later. One thing real quick that I'll say is that it's going to be a tough time coding on one screen while watching the Zoom. Like if you're trying to follow along with the Zoom on one half of the screen and your VS Code on the other half of the screen, that's going to be a tough thing to do. So we put a little bit of thought and effort into you should put a little bit of thought and effort into arranging your screen optimally to do this. One thing that I've found generally works for me is if I have my VS Code on the left here, you can do some tricks like making this smaller, dragging this over, and then having my Zoom stuff on the right over here. And then having the terminal hanging out down here so that I can click on it and run commands if I need to. And then finally having a web browser up on the side, maybe somewhere down here, so that you can look at the website and see what's up over here. Alrighty. So that's going to do it for the presentation today. As a recap, we learned what terminal is, what command line is, and we learned what Git is. We learned how to use some Git commands through the command line. And that's going to help us a lot with collaborating on our websites moving forward. We're going to have a bunch of these commands, a bunch of Git commands, command line commands. All of that is summarized here, as well as in a couple of cheat sheets that we've linked. So if you ever forget anything, you need some refreshers, definitely check those out because there's no expectation that you memorize all of these starting on day one, but you will need to get familiar with them throughout the class. So we have some cheat sheets available. And the last part is, oh, that's it. So now it's time for lunch. Try to be back in 30 minutes. And in the afternoon, we'll be doing an HTML and CSS lecture and workshop with Tommy. So look forward to that. Sweet.
See y'all in 30 minutes.
Hi all. We're gonna start the lecture in a second. I'm gonna share my screen. Hope you all had a good break.
To anyone watching the live stream, there's now some room in the Zoom room, so you can try and get in again.
Yep. All right. Just a couple of announcements. If you're going to use the help queue, it'll be extra helpful for us if you're very descriptive on what your problem is, and you either tell us a breakout room that you're going to be in or a Zoom link, an external Zoom link that you're going to be in, and then we will help you right away. So, yeah. But I think we are all ready to start with HTML and CSS. So, all right, welcome to the, I guess this is the second lecture of WebLab. We're going to talk about the basics of HTML and CSS. So you can, I guess to start, you can think of HTML as sort of the bones of your website and CSS as like the pretty skin outer layer of your website. So this is essentially the core makeup of your website that you're all going to be interacting with. So HTML, it was mentioned briefly earlier, but what does it stand for? What does it mean? What does it do, etc.? Well, obviously, it stands for high-tech machine learning. No, it doesn't. It stands for hypertext markup language. And in other words, it's the language that your web browser uses to describe the content and the structure of your web page. I said you can think of it as the bones of your web page. You can think of it as like a skeleton of your web page. It's essentially the core structure. You can also visualize it as nested boxes within each other. So if we go to an example website such as XKCD, one second, you didn't see this. If we go to an example website such as XKCD, we can use that nested box concept as a way to describe the HTML structure of this website. So let's quickly try doing this live on Zoom. So I'm gonna give you a hint. The first nested box is this, the whole big box of all the content, and we're gonna try using the annotate feature. If this becomes a mess, then we'll quickly stop trying to use it. But if you're able to try and annotate some more of the boxes on the screen of XKCD. Yeah, that's good. There's one box. Yeah, there's another. Oh, this is cool. Yeah, this main box of the content of the page. And yes, this box. Yeah, I see some boxes for all the buttons here. You can add some boxes on the title here and the links and the homepage. Okay, you guys get the idea. We're gonna clear the annotations. And I'll show you a, oh no. All right, stop drawing, stop drawing now. Yeah, we will, yeah, so you can also make another box of the internal content of the web page, so not including the background. And if you go further, you could make boxes for the navbar, as some of you drew out, boxes for the title, title heading area, and then boxes for the content, the comic. And we could go further, make boxes for each individual link, divide the content into two here, and we could go even further and further and further to each individual button here. So let's go to code now. So I have pulled up this example HTML file named hello.html, and we're going to go through the structure of or each part of the file one by one. So yeah, if we wanted to render this this file onto a website or in our web browser, sorry, this would be how it would look like. So you can see we have the heading and paragraph showing up here. So we're going to go through it all. If we go, the first line here is whoever's putting the arrow around. It's a fun game, but not now. Yeah, if we go to the first line, you see this doc type HTML thing here. And basically, this is sort of telling the web browser, hey, this website is using the latest HTML, so we don't need to use any fallback. It's just like a reassurance line. It's pretty important, but there's not much to it. But after that, we have what's called the root element, marked by these tags that say HTML. And this is where all the stuff you're going to add to your website will end up in. And then we could go one level further later. But first, I mentioned this word element. So this is basically what an HTML element is. It is composed of an opening tag and a closing tag. And then in the middle of these tags is where your content is going to go. So if we take that nested box concept again, we could describe all the elements on our hello.html page. So you can see we have this big box for this root element, which is for everything on all the information and content on our website. And then we have boxes for this head element, a box for this body element, and then boxes for everything in between. Everything inside each of these main elements here. In addition, there's a certain structure to how you format these tags. So I said that I keep saying this word nested boxes. These boxes cannot intersect with one another. So you can't have, just like in math where you have like parentheses to separate different parts of your equation. You can't, each opening parenthesis must be followed by a closing parenthesis eventually. And you can't have this sort of intersection of priority of elements here. And then if we go one level deeper into our HTML file, we have our head element I mentioned earlier and our body element. So if we go to our head element first, the head element is basically the background information of your website. It has it can have a bunch of metadata about your website that could be used by bots or search engines that are looking for your website. And also, in our case, it contains this additional element here, which is the title element, which displays the text that shows up in your tab bar on your browser. And you can see that here. Also on our slides, this would be the title. This will be in the title element of this website. In our body element, we have, this is where you'll probably be interacting the most when you're coding HTML, because this is where all the content that is shown visually to the users of your website will be nested under. So you can see here we have our heading and paragraph in our hello.html file, and you can also see here in our example XKCD page, this first red big box that we drew first would be the body element here. So, and then we can go further or deeper. We can go deeper into our individual parts of the body element. So here we have an element for a heading marked by this H1, and there's like H1 just saying that this is the highest priority heading on this page, and it says heading here. You can see it here. And then we have another element, another box for our paragraphs, marked by these P tags at the opening and closing. So that's that's an overview of our hello.html file. And as you can see, all the stuff that is showing up here is not in these little tags. They're we've labeled them as white here. So everything that is not in these tags will show up as text on your website. So I mentioned a bunch of these HTML tags. Here's just the one-page summary of these and what they're about. So we have the root of our HTML document, and then the head contains the info, the metadata about our document. The body is where you'll be interacting the most because it has all the visual content in our document. And then we have header tags for different levels of headings, and we have paragraph tags for the big blocks of text. And then we have this little new tag I didn't mention earlier called div that we're gonna get to talking more about. But you can think of it as a sort of generic box if you just want a blank box for the content that you're trying to create. And the first three that you can see here are pretty much essential for any HTML page that you're going to make. You'll always see these elements. All right, so we talked about the basic. We talked about HTML elements. We talked about the basic tags you can use, but you can go further and add what are called attributes to modify things about your element here. So we have our example element from earlier. What we can do is add to the opening tag an attribute. So the first thing you see here, the ABC, is the name of the attribute. And then we set it equal to the value that we want the attribute to be. And this will apply the attribute to everything that is in the content nested in our element. Now, for example, one purpose that we would have for using the attribute feature is for inserting links to our page. So we would use what's called the anchor element, marked by these A tags. And you'd use that to produce a link that looks something like this that'll lead to the web.lab website. And to use the anchor element, we would add an attribute. As you can see here, the attribute is spelled as href, sort of our external reference. And then in the value here, we would put the link to wherever we want to go to. And so that would make anything in the content, when the user clicks on it, lead to whatever this link is. So for leading to the web.lab website, this would be the example code that we're looking at. So you can see we have the URL here, and then the text here, and the text corresponds to the text that we show here. And when you click on this, it will lead to the web website. Another use for HTML attributes is for interacting with the image element, used to add images to our website, and marked by these IMG tags. So in this case, we would use the source attribute, src, set it equal to whatever our image is named, pusheen.gif in this example, and we would end it with a closing tag. Except you don't necessarily have to use this type of closing tag. Since for images, we typically don't have text in the content in the way that we think of it. You can instead move that slash in the closing tag into the opening tag, such like this, and then create what's called a self-closing tag. And this would be all the code you'll need to put to insert your image onto your website, and you get something like this when you open your browser. Now, for the source attribute, this assumes a file structure that looks like this, where your image, the pusheen.gif, is on the same level folder as your HTML file. But if we wanted to be more organized and maybe add an image folder to store all of our images, then to reference an image in our image folder, we would instead put the name of the folder, the images, first, and then add a slash, and then put in the name of the image that we're referencing, the pusheen.gif. Sort of like how you would use your file manager, file browser on your computer. The syntax works the same way. So back to content, I mentioned these tags before, the H1 heading tag, the paragraph block section tag, and this div element that I hinted at. What we could use div for is, say we're back to our hello.html file, and we wanted to modify both of these elements at the same time without repeating, typing in the name of the attribute over and over again. So what we could do is we could put all of this into one box, and div is perfect for that, because when we change our code to using the div element, we could, as you can see on our website, nothing has changed visually, but now we could do whatever we want, and we'd only need to put one attribute in the div, and it would apply to all of these. So yes, div has made another greater box for our heading and paragraph. And yeah, I mentioned numerous tags, from headings to paragraphs, div, and there are many more that you'll see around and interact with and want to research. But don't worry, there is no need to memorize everything, because we have this wonderful thing called the internet. So what web devs really use is called Google. So if you wanted to look up something new that you saw, or maybe you're looking for an element for an application that you haven't implemented before, the first step is going to be to maybe you are looking for what span does, so you can type into your search engine HTML span, and you get a bunch of results, and then you could pick one and read a bit about it, and you see that, span has no meaning at all, and you could read more about what span really is about by looking through these results. But if searching randomly on the internet isn't your cup of tea, then there is one website you should have on the back of your head, or I should say you should have bookmarked and have on hand. and it's called MDN. And MDN is a great reference for all things HTML and CSS and even some JavaScript when we talk about that. And it's constantly updated. At least as of last year, there was a dedicated team of Mozilla developers that kept this website up to date, so it keeps up with the rapidly changing nature of internet and web development. So this is why it's a very good resource to keep on hand. Yes, MDN is great. Meanwhile, W3 schools, not so much. You might see it pop up. In fact, you might have seen it in the previous slides. It's usually the first result that you see on Google or whatever, but we don't recommend it. And the main reason we don't recommend it is that it's not as updated as MDN. It references sometimes like old ways of implementing things. It's just not the most modern way of web development. Can be found on W3 schools. So use MDN. You won't regret it. All right, so I mentioned div at the end there, and I mentioned that div is a generic container. It doesn't have anything, any like special things like heading or anything. So you might think, oh, it's a blank slate. I can just do whatever I want with div. So I can just use div everywhere and then use attributes to modify each individual element. And so you might come to this conclusion that I should just use div, and you find a four-head approach to web development. But I'm gonna ask, why could this be bad? Type your answers in the chat box below. I might not have given you many hints, but like that was on purpose. Brainstorm. You could brainstorm a little bit. All right, yeah. Accessibility, not descriptive. It's ambiguous, hard to organize, hard to target, bad style, too cluttered. It's more work. Can't customize CSS. I see a lot of good answers and a lot of stuff that I actually cover very soon. Yeah. So I like the accessibility answer, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on at the start. The block versus inline is well, I guess spoiler alert, span is like sort of the inline version of div, but that's not necessarily what I was aiming for, because you'll see in like CSS you can sort of modify that, and there are like different inline elements and different block elements that you could use. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm gonna bring up my my reasons for why, my big reasons why this could be bad. So if we go to the MDN page on div, MDN, our favorite website, you might see a few things when you're reading through it. First off, it says as a pure container, div, the div element does not inherently represent anything. And then you scroll down a bit and you see under usage notes that the div element should only be used when no other semantic element, such as article or nav, is appropriate. And then you see a bit, it suggests other options such as section, header, footer. And basically it's saying there might be better options. But what does, I highlighted this word semantic, and you might be familiar with it in other contexts, and it's about the same in this context. Semantic just means like the meaning of the element, and like the definition of the element. So like the header would be like where your header is. Semantic is just like the underlying definition. So why do we need to be semantic in web dev? Why the semantic elements exist? So, yeah, I was hinting that accessibility is a big part of it, and yeah. So I have like two examples of like accessibility reasons, and my first one is screen readers. So people who are blind or visually impaired in some fashion still very much use the internet, probably as much as we all do. And if you've ever used a public forum or YouTube comments or I guess maybe YouTube comments sometimes, and I was thinking more like Reddit. I see Reddit a lot. There's a lot of blind or visually impaired people who use Reddit a lot, and you probably would have interacted with them at some point if you've ever posted a comment on Reddit. But they use these things called screen readers, and this is just like a very a brief glimpse on what they do. Let's see if this video plays. Let's also check if I'm sharing sound. I am.
In all the technology.
Alt-B menu, application menu, show all.
Bookmarked a few websites.
Type form, the intercept, survey mud, smashing, mass.gov, Bruce Lawson site,
I'm going
9
to
of
pick on
14.
Bruce first, since he very bravely volunteered his website.
Enter,
So-
leaving menus, about blank, Bruce Lawson's personal site, Mozilla Firefox, Bruce Lawson's personal site, 27 regions, 21 headings and 187 links. Bruce Lawson's personal site, visited heading level 1 link, Bruce Lawson's.
So I'm going to stop that there. First thing you learn.
So as you can hear, it's very fast speaking words or fast speaking voice. But you can hear it when you load a website. It says, "Oh, there's this many headings," and then it says, "Oh, what this heading is what this heading says, what the content of it is," and then it just very audibly and quickly goes through what each part of the website is for, and what the meaning of each section is that normally with people who are not visually impaired would be able to catch from a glimpse of the website. So it's very important for those people and understanding the internet. In addition, I mentioned keyboard navigation, and I brought up the example, why can you, when you're signing up for an account on a website, why can't you just hit tab to go through each box and fill out each box without moving your mouse? And that's because there's a semantic HTML element for that that allows you to hit tab and reach the next section. And it's the quickest way of doing that, of making that feature.
In all the technology.
Okay. A few more reasons. It makes your website more machine readable in the sense that it's more friendly to web crawlers, which means that your site will become more discoverable and will appear in more searches often, because search engines will know what your website is about and what results to point at your website based on how it's organized. In addition, it also makes it more human readable, easier to maintain in the future. In the case of someone who is not, the hypothetical case of someone who's not one of the founders of your website is brought on board to help maintain it, the semantic HTML elements can help them get up to speed and understanding what the website is all about. So yes, there are many more reasons, I'm sure, but like I think these are some very clear reasons for using semantics. So TLDR, don't just use div. MDN is your friend, because there might be a better option out there that that may be able to give you more opportunities to put more information on your website for all sorts of people, and all sorts of machines as well. So yes, MDN is your friend. Bookmark it right now. And that's an overview of HTML, the hypertext markup language. It's the bones of your website and the skeleton of your website. So it's important to have an understanding of this when developing the core structure of your website. right, we're gonna move to CSS now. Anyone have any burning questions that they want to ask before I blitz on to CSS? Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on. So CSS. What does this stand for? I'm not gonna give you the chance to answer. I'm just gonna give it to you right away. I think Dan mentioned it actually, but yes, it stands for cascading style sheets. In other words, it's the rules that tell your browser how stuff looks. So now we're talking about the visuals of your website, as opposed to just the structure. So in other words, the CSS is a list of descriptions. So if we go to any old website, I picked out the Discord homepage, and we take a look at it. You can see that, I guess, it might not be obvious how important CSS is from first glance, but all the structure is made by CSS. And when we strip out the CSS, you get this mess. This is an image of somewhere in the background, and this is yeah, it's a bit of a mess. CSS does a lot. It can do a lot, and yes, CSS is a list of descriptions, and work and coding time put into CSS can go a long way in making your website look pretty. Now let's get into what CSS looks like. I guess how the code of CSS looks like. So this is an example of a CSS rule set, and you might see, upon first glance, this is almost nothing like HTML, and that's true. So these are two separate languages. So keep that in mind. So we have an example rule set. It's composed of a selector at the beginning, and this is telling the website what are these rules going to be applied onto. And in this case, it's going to be applied onto all the divs on your website, all the div elements. And then inside our list of rules, each rule has a property, which in this first case is the font color. And then it has a value for that property, which in this case is red. So what this rule is doing is that it's going to go to all the divs and make the font color red. And that same structure goes down, stays consistent throughout all your rules in a rule set. So if we go back to our hello.html page, you can see we replace the piece here with divs. This is just for the sake of the example. But if we just focus on our body elements, we see that we have two elements here. We can add a third one, also using divs that we can maybe say is for info. And then if we apply our style sheet, our CSS style sheet, onto our HTML page, that we just the style sheet that we described earlier, or the rule set that we described earlier, you can see it has made everything in the divs in our div elements. It's made everything in div elements red. It is the font of everything of the color of the font and everything in our div elements red. It has made the font into Arial, and it has made the font size into 24 point, which you'll have to believe me, this is 24-point font. Yeah. With CSS, there are a few different attributes you could use directly. One is called class, and we set the value to the name of the class. And so in this example, if we've created an info class just in our div element, and then if we change the selector to to say info with a dot at the beginning to tell the browser that this is for a class, this is a selector for a class, and we leave everything the same. So all the rules are the same, you can see that the rules only get applied to this info div here. There also is an attribute called ID, and we have replaced the class with the ID here of unique. And in the CSS, we've replaced the selector with one called unique with a pound sign or a hashtag at the beginning, whatever you want to call it. And this signifies that this is an ID. And it has also made only the info text here have this formatting. So it looks like they're doing the same thing, but there actually is some underlying differences between IDs and classes. So IDs, an element can only have one ID, while an element in your HTML can have multiple classes. And what that sort of looks like is in your example div, if you add an ID and say this is an ID, this is the only ID that this element can have. But you can have multiple classes in your element separated by spaces, or the names of the classes separated by spaces, and all three of these classes would apply onto your element. In addition, IDs must be unique in any given HTML document, but you can use the same class on multiple elements. So in other words, an element can only have one ID, and an ID can only be applied to one element. What if you use two classes that set two different values of the same attribute? I believe, if we go back here, I believe the class that you put first gets priority. So whatever the attribute is that you specify here will get priority. I don't quite remember. I think it's the first one. Yeah. So what? And also there's the syntax differences that I mentioned earlier. So especially with the pound hashtag for ID, and it starts with a dot or period for classes. And otherwise, the syntax is the same. The rules will look the same. Can we use ID and class at the same time? Yes, you can. Yeah. And we recommend that you, for your websites, that you only use CSS styling, or you only use classes for CSS styling. A big reason why you only use classes is that part where you can use classes multiple times across your code. So it's a lot cleaner way for reapplying formatting on multiple different areas of your code. Okay. Another important concept is that you might have noticed that in our hello.html example, that the element with the h1 tags look different from the element with the p tag or the div tag later on, and that's because tags such as h1 have some default styling. It looks kind of like this. This is kind of this is the default styling for h1, while the default styling for div just tells your browser that this is a block element. But have no fear. Any custom applied CSS rules, whether it's to a class or an ID, if you want to go against our advice, it'll overwrite it. So don't worry. You could change any of these on your end. All right. So we have our HTML and we have our CSS, and I mentioned that there are two very separate coding languages. But how do we combine them now? Well, if we go back to our hello.html and we go into our head element, there's a element that we have to add. It's called the link element, and it has two main attributes. One of them is the relation. In this case, we're adding a style sheet, so we put style sheet in the value. And then there's an href that you saw before. The location of the style sheet. So we put the name of the style sheet here. Note that this is completely different from the anchor element with the A tags And so you should not use link when you're creating hyperlinks to different websites or different parts of your website. This is for linking. In this case, we use it for linking our style sheet to our HTML file. So, in conclusion, HTML, you can think of it as nested boxes. And CSS, you can think of it as a list of descriptions for those boxes. And what that means is a description in the CSS affects a box in the HTML. So we're going to move on to the workshop in a second. But are there any questions that y'all have? We can spend a little bit of time answering that. What other things can rel equal to? Yeah, MDN is your friend. Yes. I don't know off the top of my head, but MDN is your friend. Yeah. I'm going to take a second and get set up for the workshop.
While he's doing that, I will just mention to you all, I think we mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, but the way we're going to make this work is we'll have breakout rooms. I'm going to open them in a second. You should not all go to the breakout rooms immediately. Just go to the breakout room if you need help, okay? Or if Tommy sends you to the breakout rooms or tells you to go there for like working on something on your own, then go to the breakout rooms. Otherwise, you should stay in the main room, or for those of you watching on the YouTube stream, just keep watching the YouTube stream. It doesn't matter for you. And then for getting help, like we mentioned earlier, it's going to be weblab.2/q for the help queue. And if you're in a breakout room or you can get to a breakout room in Zoom, then just put in your breakout number there and a staff member will come help you. If you are watching on YouTube or don't have a breakout room for some other reason, then either message a staff member in the Zoom or just post your ticket on the help queue with another Zoom meeting link and we can try to join your Zoom. Cool. I'm going to open breakout rooms now. Like I said, do not join unless you want to miss Tommy's beautiful introductions.
Wait, I'm still assigning. Can you just go ahead and start?
Okay. Well, the beginning of the workshop is going to be about getting the workshop, which was already done in the first lecture. So we're just going to go through that super quickly. All right. So we're gonna build what's called Catbook, which is the perfect social media website. And we have two tools: your code editor, which should be VS Code, and your terminal or Git Bash, depending on the OS you're on. Perfect. All right, so this is going to be getting the workshop. I'm going to do it very quickly, just to catch people up. So let's do this actually. How do I? There we go. All right, so I have the slides up and I have my console up here. So I have my console. I'm going to go to my desktop. If I can spell, I can't spell. Spoiler alert. And then we're going to get the workshop from here. And we're going to go to code and copy this. And then we're going to type git clone. We're going to paste it in. And we have cloned the workshop. Again, I'm just going to go through this really quickly. We're going to change directory into the workshop. And we're going to actually git checkout. I'm going to check out the workshop 0 starter branch. Actually, yes, everyone should do this. Check out the starter branch of our, or W0-starter. All right, so again, to git checkout W0-starter. And then we're going to go take a look at the code that is in the starter. So I have my VS Code up. We're gonna open the folder. Let's do it this way. Let's go to desktop and select the Catholic React folder I just cloned. And then we're going to go to our index.html file. So yeah, you can see that it looks pretty similar to our hello.html file example. Yeah, what Justin said. I'm going to do things my own way, which might be weird. But there are many different ways to do the same thing. So yeah. And then if we take our index.html and just drop it into our browser, you can drag from here directly from the Explorer in VS Code and put it in a tab. You can see that our hello world is rendered here, which is what we have, the only thing we have in our body. And you can also see in the title element, we have cat book, and it shows up here. So this is our goal. We're going to create Shannon's cat book profile, which will look like this in the end. All right, so this one part we're gonna let you free and do the HTML on your own for a bit. So I think this is when we open breakout rooms.
Now?
Yeah, do it now. So take a look at the slides. These are this is what you're aiming for. So you're gonna add some text, and you gotta add your profile pic, which is this corgi image that you can see in the file structure. Oh, if dragging index HTML into your browser didn't work, you can also just navigate to your folder in the Catbook React folder, and
Wait, as a side note, basically I assigned like half the people to breakout rooms, and then there's like some people who either aren't here or their name isn't matching, or I didn't get a chance to assign them yet. So if you're able to just like communicate with your group members to try to join the same one, or like message staff through like post in the chat or on Piazza or something if you're having problems with breakout rooms.
Yeah.
And right now I'm just gonna unassign people to random ones. If you don't like it, you can move.
Okay, yeah, it's the same repository. I'll just go through what I did again to get to here. So you can go to File, Open Folder, and go to your desktop or wherever it is in the Catbook React folder, and then select the folder. What was the Git checkout thing? So after you clone the workshop, you want to check out the starter code that we have for the workshop. So after you go into your Catbook folder, you type in git checkout w0-starter, and that will get you this hello world that we had here. How do you clone it from GitHub? This line. If we go back to our GitHub, you want to copy, click on code, the screen code button, and copy this and paste that. Yeah, you can join breakout rooms now and do these first two steps. Also, you can stay there throughout the workshop, or you can come back to the main room at the end, or at the end of these two steps. How long should we give? Like 5, maybe like 3 minutes.
Yeah, 3 to 5 minutes sounds good.
Okay, 5 minutes. Yeah, 3:57. Claire is still assigning breakout rooms, so if you don't have the ability to join one, then feel free to start going here, and then you could join later, or just stick around here. Okay, I'm going to start the walkthrough, and if anyone's listening on stream, you can rejoin the main room if you want. I'm going to start coding. I should be able to send a broadcast to the breakout rooms. Yeah. All right, so we're just gonna run through these steps real fast in my end. So the first step, yeah, the first step. I already put the name, the title of the page, Shannon Woot, and then we're going to add a horizontal line, which can be added with just this element. It's self-closing. We don't add any attributes right now to it, and this will create a horizontal line like this. And then you can create 2 section elements for our about me and our my favorite type of cat sections. And then in the first section element, we'll create a heading, H4 in this case, and that will be named about me. And then we will add a paragraph, and we will put I am really allergic to cats. I don't know why I have the cat book. I'm also going to close the Explorer. And then in the second section, it's going to be much of the same. We're going to use H4. Oh yeah, make sure you are checked out. You have checked out to Workshop 0 Starter if you see a lot of things in your file or in your hierarchy. But we're gonna do the same thing. Here, my favorite cat. Type of cat. And paragraph tag. We're gonna type in corgi because that's a cat, of course. And then we hit save, and we go back to our index.html in our web browser, and we hit refresh. I'm gonna hit F5, and you can see here we have our page. We have our page that should look like what we have in this picture. And that is the end of step 1. If you weren't able to do that and you want to catch up, this goes for any other step in this workshop. You want to type in git reset -- hard, and that will clear your changes to your index.html file. And then you want to type out git checkout W0 step 1. And I could do that real quick as an example. So git reset -- hard. And you see it reset to the beginning of the starter bridge. And then we're going to go git checkout W0 step 1. And you can see we have our page back. I'm going to hit save again and reload, and it's still the same. All right, we're gonna do step 2, which was adding the picture. So, oops. So we have our corgi picture in our cat book folder. See it right here. If we want to add it, and we can use the image element that we mentioned earlier. And then we want to create an attribute source. Put some quotes in. And we want the source to be our corgi.jpg. And then we hit save. We reload cat book, and there's a corgi image at the top. So all of you should be at this part. If you don't have all this, feel free to ask a question in the question doc or ask in the help queue for help. But I'm going to move on to the next step. And yes, if you want to catch up, remember to git reset -- hard, and then type in check out workshop 0 W0 - step 2. All right, so now we're going to use our, we're going to use, so what this checkout step does is it just redirects you to a different branch that catches you up to what we have at the end of the last step. So, or yeah, the end of the last step we just did. So it will catch you up to what this page appears like. So we're going to start with our CSS. So first off, we're going to link it into our HTML file. You can see we have it here. It's currently empty. Just has some placeholder comment, your code here. And we're going to build into our head element, just like I mentioned in the lecture earlier. And we're going to create a link element, self-closing. And the relation is going to be a style sheet. And the href is going to be styles.css. And if I hit save, it's not going to do anything because it's empty, but yeah, we have linked it to our website. I'm also going to split this like that. Yeah. And make this smaller. So the rel tells the browser that this is a style sheet that we're going to link, and the href is the location of it. All right. And then next, next, we're going to center the text on our page. So we can center our name. I should be in the center. It's pretty important. So let's center it. So we're going to create a text center class in our styles.css. Typing a dot and then text center with camel case. And we're going to do 2 curly braces. Hit enter between them. That's what I usually do. Some people do it differently. And then we will use the text align property and set its value to center. And hit hit a semicolon. I wonder, this is for staff, if there's like a question on the question doc that is really important. Maybe it would be good to like forward it here or something so I could say it out loud and just like give it to the whole class. I don't know if that's a good idea. So.
One quick comment that please everyone stop asking questions in the Zoom chat because it just makes it really confusing. So if you have questions, please put them in the questions doc. We answer them pretty fast.
Yeah. Alternatively, you could have the questions doc. If you don't have a question, you can have the questions doc up on a different screen or a different window or tab or whatever, and just reference that. Maybe you have a question and someone else had the same question and it's already answered. So yeah. All right, so we're gonna hit save. We've added our text center class with the rule text align center inside. And then before we add it to our website, this is what's called a utility class. And what a utility class is that they generally only apply one CSS attribute modification. So in this case, we're applying a text center, centering our text rule, and it's the only rule in this rule set. And we're going to preface it with a dash or a U dash. And we're going to, the reason why it's called a utility class is that we're intending to use this multiple times across our code. So it's good to just have like something we have on hand to just apply very quickly. So in order to center our name, we're going to take this U-text center class. We're going to go to our H1 with our name, and we're going to type in, creating a new attribute. We're gonna create a class attribute, set it equal to the name of the class that we want to apply to our name. So U-text center. Gonna hit save, go back to catbook, and need to hit save on the CSS file too. And then refresh, and our name is centered. Again, if you want to catch up, git reset -- hard, and then git checkout W0 - step 3 will get you to this page. This page. I should leave it up longer. All right, so we have our brand new utility class. Maybe you want to center the rest of the text on our page. So we can do that very easily now. So we have this class attribute in our H1 where our name is. We can actually just copy this and put it at the sections, at the opening tags of both sections. And then if we hit save and go back to catbook and refresh, now everything's centered. So again, all I did is just copy pasted this, or I guess from here, this class equals U-text center, and I just pasted it into both of our sections, and that centered all of our text here, all the text nested underneath each of the sections. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, in order to catch up again, this is step 4. So we have a developed HTML file, and you can sort of see it's already getting more complicated in our hello.html example, but the same basic concepts still apply. We have our 2 big boxes for our 2 sections, and they both have 2 parts, 2 different elements inside of them. And as you can see, we just put a class. We just put a class in the parent boxes, and it applied the formatting changes to everything in both of these elements in here. So the concept still applies no matter how complicated your file may get. All right, we're getting there. Now, well, we want to put a fancy new font in our Catbook profile page. So, as you can see, the font is random. I think it's Times New Roman. It's serif. It's kind of, I wouldn't say ugly. It's just not modern looking, but like we could change that. So we're going to go to site fonts.google.com. And actually, I'm going to make this full screen. So we're going to go to here, fonts.google.com. I'll open it in a new tab real quick. And I'll type it in the chat just to. And then what you want to do when you get to fonts.google.com is you want to type in the font Open Sans. So we're here. You want to go to the search bar and type in Open Sans. And you can see here, it popped up here, our Open Sans. So we're going to click on it. And when we click on it, let's go back to slides. I have labeled the steps of clicks that you're going to want to make. It probably will make more sense if I do it live. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the 300 and 600 font weights. So you can see here, light 300, and hit select this style, and semi-bold 600. We're going to select this style. Now this should pop up automatically, but if it doesn't, then just click on this button in the corner, this view and hide your selected families. And then you're going to click on the @import bullet. And you're going to copy everything in between the style and the style element here that it gives us, because this is the CSS call in here. All right, let's put it back. Then you're going to want to go to your code, particularly your CSS file. You're going to put this at the top. Just paste what you copied. Again, we copied this and only this. You're just going to paste it at the top here. And yeah, you can see it here. I pasted it. And then we're going to, what do I have next? Yes, okay. We're going to create another CSS rule set. I'll just pull it up on the side just to show it. In particular, we only really need the body right now, the body selector. So what this will do is, much like any other selector, anything that you put here will apply the changes to everything inside of everything that this applies to. So everything that is nested underneath the body element, which in this case is everything on our website, will be applied these rules. So we're going to put in the font family property. And actually, there's an easier way to do this because Google is nice. If we go back to our Google Fonts page for Open Sans, we just want to copy this code underneath it where it says CSS rules to specify families. And we're just going to copy this. And we're just going to paste this in our body. And when we hit save and refresh our cat book, the font's changed. Yeah. So you can see we have two different font weights. We have the bolder font on the headings and the thinner font on the paragraphs. And if you want to catch up, this is step 5, W0-step 5. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going along with the workshop. Probably not gonna do a big breakout room session again, because we're gonna introduce new things like in each step. So I think it's good to stay together for that. All right, in this case, we're gonna add a navbar at the top of our web page, right here. See, on most websites, heck, on the Google Fonts website, there's usually a navbar, so that's pretty convenient to have. It's a quick way to reach different parts of your website. So we're gonna add our own. So we're gonna go to the top of our body element. We're gonna type in the nav tag, NAV, and we're gonna create. Actually, let's just put in the basic HTML first. Inside the nav element, we're going to create another h1 element, and that's going to be the title of our web page, which is Catbook. And then this is spoilers for the future, but we're going to put some classes into our navbar so that we can modify them with CSS. So we're going to create in the parent nav element a class called nav container, and in the h1 element we're going to create a class called nav title. All right, we're gonna hit save on our HTML and refresh our catbook, and voila, we have something at the top of our page that resembles a navbar. But we can style it a bit. We'll get there. Make it look more like a navbar. So first thing you might want to do is add some colors. But first, we want to define some colors. This is under the assumption that you're going to use these colors all across your website to give yourself a consistent color theme. So CSS has these handy dandy tools that you're probably familiar with from other languages, variables that you can define and use throughout your style sheet. In this case, we're going to create variables for a few different colors, this blue here, and this gray, and this white. You can see the code here, but I'm gonna type it out step by step. So we're gonna type out this root selector, and this selector is just kind of special in that it really doesn't correspond to anything in your HTML. It's just where the variables are stored. And we're gonna create our first variable. Every variable has to start with 2 dashes. And we're going to type out the name of our variable, which is primary, colon. And then in this case, we're going to use the hex color code for the blue that we want, which you can see on the slide. It's 396DFF. And we're going to do the same for the other 2 variables. So gray, it is 7, and white is just 3 Fs, because this is assuming the for any color code that has 6 repeating decimals, you can just put the first 3 and it'll be fine. Or 6 repeating hexadecimal digits. All right, I'm gonna hit save. Yes, so remember the dash dash for any variable that you put in your CSS. And then we're going to create a new class, or not create a new class, but create a new rule set to define one of the classes that we created here. So we're going to create a rule set for the nav title class. Semicolon white, yes, thanks. Going to create a rule set for the nav title class. Just going to copy and paste nav title from the HTML and the 2 curly braces. And then we're going to use the font color, which is just color property, and use the variable that we created earlier, which is the dash dash primary. And you need the 2 dashes also when you call the variable in your code. We're going to also create a rule for the font size and put it as 20 pixels. And we hit save. And once we hit save and refresh Catbook, you see the font's changed. It is now blue and it's a bit smaller now. Yes, keep this in mind. This is how you call a variable in your code. You need the var, the parentheses, the 2 dashes from the 2 dashes from the start, and the name of your variable, and then closing parentheses. It's also a little line we're going to add in nav title. This is just to cancel some of the default formatting of H1. So we're going to remove the margin. We're going to talk about that later. And we're going to set the font weight to normal. You could also use the font weight 300. There's a few different ways to do this. I just put normal here. And when we do that and refresh, you see it has changed. All right. And what this means with variables is that you can change the color here to anything you want, and it'll update the color in your navbar. So say we wanted to, I'm gonna cheat and use the VS Code color picker. So we want to make it green. Hit save, refresh, it's green. So variables are useful. All right, this is W0 step 6 if you want to catch up. I'll chill here for a bit. All right, so the next part is that we're gonna style the navbar a bit further. So you see it looks a bit different here. We could do this with the variables that we created in the classes that we defined earlier in HTML. The spoiler alert already gave away the new container class that you need. Oops. But that'll make your life easier. I'll give you a few seconds to try and do it on your own, and then, and also to try and catch up, and I'll do it for you.
I don't think this was mentioned on the slides, but if you're checking out to a new branch, make sure you do git reset -- hard, and that will
Yes.
basically clear any changes you made. So if you're getting stuck on checking out to a new branch, make sure you run git reset space -- hard, and that will just kind of clear any changes that you made. And you also shouldn't be committing or pushing any changes. Please do not do that.
Yeah, I don't think you'll be able to, but don't try. But yeah, I didn't have it on every slide, but yes, git reset -- hard and then check out. So yeah. All right. So let's match the styling together. So we're gonna copy this nav. I'm actually just copying. We should actually just copy it from here, and create a new rule set with our nav container class. I just copied the name of the class just to save on typing. The 2 brackets or 2 curly braces, and hit enter in between. And we want the background of our nav bar to be the blue that we defined earlier. So there's a property called background color that we're going to use. And we're going to set that equal to not this. We're going to use our variable again. In fact, we could honestly just copy it from here and paste it here. And if we hit save and refresh catbook, it's blue, but also our font's blue. So we can change that back to white. Go to color here and use our white variable and replace it with replace the primary with the white. And then hit save, you refresh, voila. You now have a nav bar with the background. And git reset -- hard and git checkout W0 - step 7 if you want to catch up. And I'll sit here for a few seconds. Okay. So take a look at your catbook page in your browser, and appreciate its beauty. But you might notice something. You might notice something all around it. What's that something? You might notice a void. It surrounds your catbook profile. The void. You can see it here. You can zoom in even more. There's a void. We have to get rid of it. We have to fill it up. Let's see what's happening though. So if we go back to our catbook page and right click it and hit inspect element. I'm on Firefox. I'm pretty sure the steps are the same in Chrome, or roughly similar. But yeah, if you click on inspect element, and then you want to click on pick an element from the page in the top left corner, and then you want to look for the body element. You see it up here. You want to click on the body element. It might require some finding it, so click on that. And then if you click on that, and I'm actually going to make this full screen, you can also see we select the body element in this inspector HTML link text editing thing here. But if you go all the way to the right under the layout and open this and scroll down the box model, and you see a thing. It says margin. I mentioned this. Oh, you can make this bigger. I did not know that. Okay. Yes, you can see a thing called margin, and it's 8 on each side. It's 8 somethings on each side. That's the void. We need to get rid of the void. How do we get rid of that void then? Yeah, so these are the steps. It's in the slides. Again, inspect element, pick an element, look for the body, click it, and then go to layout and scroll down. You can also alternatively just click on the body here. Yeah, click on the body here and you'll see it as well. And it's under layout. There you go. But yes, the void. And we go to the margin. See there's 8 somethings of margin. And what is margin, you might ask? Or what is this box model that you saw? Well, the box model is sort of a way to define space on your elements. So the margin is the outside of the border of your box. And then there's also padding on the inside of the border, which is space in between the border, which is the bounds, the edge of your box, and the actual content that's in the box. And these can all be modified in CSS. See here, we have margin here already. So yes, these can all be modified in CSS, and you can play around with these. This is a live editor, and you can see the differences, what border does, and what margin does, and what padding does. All right, so we're gonna get rid of the void. So we can go to our rule set that corresponds to body, and we can add a new selector directly onto it, the HTML selector, and we just add another rule, margin 0. And we hit save. And if we go back to Catbook, we have made our margin 0 everywhere by just putting a 0 in. So if we go back to Catbook and close this out and refresh, the void is gone. We have solved the mystery. The earth is saved. There's no more void. All right, but let's talk a bit more about what we did here and what we can do instead, perhaps. So I mentioned that I just put a 0 here, and it got rid of the void on all sides of our Catbook page. But there is a thing called ordering in CSS where if you put multiple values into one rule, you can, if you put multiple values into one rule, it does different things based on the number of values, and we'll see right now. So we put in one value in our margin call, in our margin rule, and what this will do is it will set every single side, all 4 sides of our box to, in this case, in the sides, 10 pixels. And then if we put 2 values, you can see the first value, the 10 pixels, will set the top and the bottom of our box to 10 pixels. And then our second value, the 20 pixels, will set the right and the left side of our box to 20 pixels. And then if we add a third value, now the first value will only set the top of our box to 10 pixels. But because we have a third value, that sets the bottom of our box to 30 pixels now. And the second value still sets the right and left side of our box to 20 pixels. And then if we add a fourth value, all of these correspond to each individual side of the box, going clockwise, starting from the first one, which defines the size of the margin on the top of the box. And then the second one defines it for the right side, the third one defines it for the bottom, and the fourth one defines it for the left side. See, it goes clockwise. This is also another way to think about it. If you like to visualize it like this. So yes. So we've gotten rid of the void. But if we go back to our catbook page, now you see catbook is right up against the edge of the screen. There's no space for the C to breathe here. So now we could add some more some space for our catbook to breathe by adding padding. So if we can go into the code and add this right away. This is what it would look like. So you can see that we're adding padding, 8 pixels at the top and 16 at the right. And we could arbitrarily add pixels. So what's like stopping us from just putting 17 pixels at the top and 34 at the right? That's 17 times 2. We could also use a system. There's one called the 8-point grid system, and it's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple way of having a standard organization for the visuals of your website. And the basics of how this works is to define all of your objects, the sizing of your objects, or the sizing of your elements by multiples of 8. And you can kind of see that here. That it just makes it seem a bit more orderly and balanced, which may make your website look more organized. So we can start implementing this 8-point grid system by going into our CSS and creating some variables for this. So we have an extra small variable for 4 pixels. We have a small variable for 8 pixels. Now we're using pixels instead of points, but it's the same idea. Oh, I forgot the colon. Yeah, we're using pixels. And then we have a third one, medium, for 16 pixels. We have L, large, for 24 pixels, and this could go on and on if you want. And then we're going to go to our nav container, and we're going to add some padding. So if you remember from our box model here, the padding is in between the border, the edge of the shape, and the actual content of the shape, or of the element, shape element. So it just creates some space in between the edge and the content. So we're going to add some of that padding. Create a padding rule. That's a paddle rule, a padding rule. We're going to use some variables. You can use variables in this way for multiple values in one rule. And for the top and bottom of our element, we're going to use the small variable, which corresponds to 8 pixels. And for the left and right, or right and left of our element, we're going to use the medium variable. And we're going to hit save. And when we refresh, now our catbook has some padding at the top, like this. All right, that was a lot. I gotta wait a little bit for you guys to catch up, but you can also do the git reset -- hard and check out to step 8 if you want to get to where we are. All right. Yeah, the next step, let's talk about border radius. So, well, okay, spoilers, but you might have noticed that our image at the top, it has sharp corners. It's not very nice. You could cut yourself on those corners, they're so sharp. But we could use border radius to round out those corners. I'm not gonna use 50 pixels. We're gonna use our variables. Instead, keeping with that 8-point grid system, or 8-pixel grid system in this case. One sec. All right. So how are we going to do this? Well, if we go to our image element, you can see we don't have a class appended to it, but that's fine. We could just directly edit the image element for now, because we only have one image. And let's say we want to apply border radius on all the images on our website. So, oh wait, not yet, later. But actually, we're gonna create a class. That is a later step. Sort of later step, not really a later step. Scratch that. We're gonna create an image class, a class for image that we're gonna call avatar. Or we're gonna call it avatar, not the class. I always do that. We're gonna create a class called avatar. And we're going to put it in our image element and then go to our CSS file. And we're going to put that same class here. Avatar. Again, we put the class, we created a class called avatar, named avatar, and we put that as an attribute in our image element. And we started creating a rule set for our avatar. Right now it's empty, but we put the dot avatar in our style sheet. And what we're going to do under avatar, this is a property called border radius, as you might expect. And for border radius, we're going to use the variable that we defined earlier. We're going to use the medium in this case. And we just need one because we're going to apply it to all 4 corners on our image avatar thing. And we hit refresh. And I am missing something. Did I refresh? Yes, I did refresh. Pull up. Oh, I didn't hit save here. Always. Now it works. Yeah. Forgot to hit save. But yes, now there is a border radius on the edge of our image. All right, that was step 9. And we could go further. We could make it perfectly round. How do we do that? I refer you to the internet. or you could just repat our code by going to step 10. I'm not going to do it live. I'm actually just I'm gonna check out the step 10 because it is quite a process. But feel free to look through the code on your own to how that works. And then if we refresh, it's round now. But yes, feel free to look on your own to see how that happened. All right, we're almost there. We're almost there. Ours kind of looks like the one on the left, and we're looking for the one on the right. And you can see that the sections are arranged in rows, in a row fashion, or along a row, into 2 columns, which is the opposite of how we have it now. So how do we do that? The internet is your friend, but let's walk through the internet real quick. If you Google something like how do we make columns of things or something like that, you might come across our old pal, yes, not our old pal, W3 Schools. And W3 Schools tells you to use float first. But don't use float. Float is old news. The internet can be your friend because the new news is called Flex. It's called Flexbox. This is more modern. Float is bad. Don't use float. Flex is better. Not this way of doing Flex, but Flex is better. Flex is better. So Flex is a I'll leave this full screen. Flex is a way of flexibly orienting different arrangements of elements on your page. It has a few different functions. We'll run through them real quick. Well, one by one. So the first one is called flex direction, and that's one we're interested in. This determines how we will arrange the items in our flex box. So we can use flex to reorient our website to look like this. Now we can just add, now to start, we need to add a flex box around our sections. And we're close on time, so I think I will continue pushing through this. So right. So we want to make the whole section here into a flex box so we can control how we want to arrange parts of our website. So we can use div to group everything in our body here, or everything under our name here, into one box. So we apply one modification. And that modification, we're going to call it, we're going to create a class and we're going to call it u-flex. Flex. And so we wrapped our entire section in divs, and we've given the div a class u-flex. And then in our CSS, we're going to create a rule set for that u-flex. And in that rule set, we're going to have one important rule that is display :flex. And this will make this entire div into a flex box. And I believe if we hit refresh, yes, it will by default arrange it into a row orientation with 2 columns, 1 column, 2 columns of content in 1 row. So we've made this into a flexbox. Again, we don't have to specify flex direction because this is the default. And this will get you to step 11. But you might notice that these boxes are different sized. You can even go to inspect element and see these boxes are different sized, different widths. Well, Flex can fix that. It can also control the sizing of the content inside the Flexbox. So Flex Basis sets the default size, quote unquote default size of items inside the box. And then there's another one called Flex Grow, which defines what items will get more space when your window is expanded, or when we want to fill up our Flexbox to a certain part of our website. And I will go through, show the GIFs in full screen. So Basis, it sets a default size of different parts of your Flexbox. And then Grow can show which part of your Flexbox, or which items in your Flexbox will get greater priority on the space that it has to fill. So I'll do it live right now, but you can, if you want to jump ahead and do it right away, you can go ahead. There's this website, weblab.to/flex, which has a lot more information on the basics of Flex. Well, that's not everyone to everyone. If you want to read that, but we can do it together right now. So in our 2 sections, we're going to add another class called subcontainer. And for our CSS, we're going to add that subcontainer rule. I'm going to hit save here. I'm going to add that subcontainer rule here, or subcontainer rules for the subcontainer class here. And what we want in that subcontainer class is we want 2 things. We want Flex Basis. I want to set that to 0. We don't need a default size. We just take up. We'll see when we put Flex Grow in. We just work with what we have, and there's no need for any box to be minimally big. So we can set that 0, or no need to set a minimum, and then we use Flex Grow, and we want to set that to 1. And what that will do is that since each section has been given the class subcontainer, then they will both equally get the extra space they'll both equally get space to fill up their Flexbox, the Flexbox. So what that will look like when we hit save and refresh is it'll equalize the space between these 2 elements. And if we do a quick inspect element, you can see they are both 330 in this configuration, 330 wide, 330 pixels wide. And that was step 12. And if you've reached here, then you are a CSS meowster. That's so bad. But there's a lot more to CSS than this. CSS is it's vast. And again, it's probably impossible to memorize it. MDN is your friend, and MDN is especially your friend. Some other websites can help, but yes, use the internet. Again, I'll recommend the guide at this link that I posted in the chat. And there are also a few different games for learning Flexbox if you want to practice using it and practice seeing what different parts of Flexbox do. You can play it on your own time. And there's also some homework if you want to do some extra work with our catbook page. If you do, check out W0-step 13 again on your own time. It has some instructions for what you should do. And then to get to the answers, you use git checkout W0-complete. And remember to git reset --hard every time. And yes, there's so much more to CSS again. But there's going to be an advanced CSS lecture, not by me, next week. So stay tuned for that. Yes, Flex will make you powerful. It gives you the power. And lastly, there's some extra setup homework available at this link. Yes, come declares advanced CSS lecture next week. But yes, there's some extra setup homework at this link. I'm going to post it in the chat once again. So make sure you work on that tonight. And this is for, most of the setup is for future workshops. So it's important to get this done as soon as possible. So yes, that is all I have for this workshop and lecture. And we're 5:01, but oh yes, there are also office hours tonight from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. If you need help with either the homework or setup or anything related to WebLab, there are office hours tonight. So yeah, thank you for listening. I believe it's on Gather, right?
We will post the link later on Piazza, so please check Piazza.
Okay, yes. Yay. Thank you for sticking around and
Thank you.
Welcome. I will stop sharing. Yeah.
Should we stop streaming too?
That would be good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop the recording.
So many things going on at once.
I don't know how to stop the stream though. So.
I think Kai has to.
Yeah.
All right.
It'd be bad if a student could stop the stream.
Wait,